Hello everyone. My name is TMEG and I am going to report about the rubrics for assessing rhythm and tempo. First, what is a rubrics? A rubrics is a scoring guide used to evaluate the quality of students' constructed responses, or we say that a set of criteria for grading a performance. Objectives. In this lesson, the student will be able to first, learn general rubrics or guidelines in assessing musical topics pertaining to rhythm and tempo, and use the knowledge learned in these rubrics to formulate his/her own set of specific guidelines when assessing students in the future, tailored to the circumstances of the class. Diba, as a future teacher, ang lanato mahibaw-an ini so that we can able to judge or to score our future students soon. Here, as what you see, it is a sample of general rubrics for assessing a student's learning in rhythm and tempo. The numbers before each rubric indicate the achievement level as shown in the previous lesson. These rubrics cover both written and performance-based activities. Here's 0. You give your student 0 if the student cannot read nor write rhythm on staff notation. 1. The student can read and write rhythms after many repeats of a musical sample. 2. The student can read and write rhythms of one piece or song but cannot transfer the knowledge to a new or different song. 3. The student sufficiently reads and notates rhythms of different songs, whether old or new. 4. The student adequately reads and notates rhythms of different songs in a variety of temps, from slow to moderate, fast, and very fast. That's how you will score or give a score to your students about the rhythm and tempo. Next is lesson 20, rubrics for assessing timbre. When we see timbre, it is to determine the sounds. Objectives. In this lesson, the student will be able to first, learn general rubrics, guidelines in assessing musical topics pertaining to timbre, and use the knowledge learned in these rubrics to formulate his/her own set of specific guidelines when assessing students in the future, tailored to the circumstances of the class. Again, listed below is a sample of general rubrics for assessing a student's learning and timbre. The numbers before each rubric indicate the achievement level as shown in the previous lessons. These rubrics cover both written and performance-based activities. When you score your student 0, the student cannot visually and orally musical instruments. He/she cannot tell if an instrument is classified as a stringed, woodwind, brass, or percussion. The student cannot differentiate between a low pitch and a high pitch voice. Mao din may score sa imo student if kana ang ija performance. Then, 1 ang imo score if the student is severely limited in identifying musical instruments and the nature as to how they are played, and in determining whether or human voice is high or low. Dili maka-determine ang student but limited ra siya sa musical instruments or the nature or how they are played, and sa pag-determine whether ang voice ng tao or ang nagkanta is high ba or low. But, waya ra lamang diha nag-base ang pag-determine ng high or low sa pagkanta ng isa ka tao, but also sa ato mabati sa ato palibot. Example, ang tugtugaok ng manok, ang tingog sa sakyanan, di ba? Through that, madetermine nato kung kana ba na pitch is high ba or low pitch. 2. The student recognizes some of the musical instruments and the nature as to how they are played, both orally and visually. She can identify whether a human voice is high or low, but is not that consistent in differentiating between alto and tenor range. So here, the student makarecognize siya ng musical instruments kung tag-played ang music both orally and visually. So, both sa ija mabati or sa ija makita. So, maka-identify sab siya sa human voice kung ni taas or ni obos ba. Then, pero there is a consistent sa pag-differentiate between sa alto and tenor range. 3. The student can identify orally and visually most of the musical instruments and can associate their sounds with an extra musical idea. So she knows how sound is produced in each instrument. The student can also generally determine orally if a voice is either in the range of soprano, alto, tenor, or bass. So diri the student maka-identify siya kung makabati ra siya ng music or makakita ra siya. So, diri pod, she knows how sound is produced in each instrument. And then, makakuha na sab siya, makadetermine na sab siya if ang range ba ng voice is na-fall ba sa soprano, alto, tenor, o sa bass. So, diri, 4 ang score na imo ihatag sa imo student if she can identify orally and visually majority of the musical instruments, either upon listening to them alone or in combination with 2 or more instruments. So she can also classify them as either part of one of the following ensembles. So di ba nagklase about ensembles, which is drum and lyre band na fall ba sila sa rondola, pangkat kawayan, western orchestra. So the student can distinguish the fine line of difference between a soprano voice and an alto voice, and between tenor and a bass voice when listening to choir recording. So sa 4 uptik na si siya makadetermine kung bisan man kanda si siya mamati ra si siya ng choir. So next, lesson 21, rubrics for assessing harmony and texture. So when we see harmony, it is the combination of simultaneously sounded musical notes to produce chords and chord progression having a pleasing effect. So, ang texture naman is how the tempo or kung sa kakuskusgon, ang melodic and harmonic materials are combined in a musical composition, determining the overall quality of the sound piece. Objectives. So in this lesson, the student will be able to learn general rubrics or guidelines in assessing musical topics pertaining to harmony and texture, and use the knowledge learned in these rubrics to formulate his or own set of specific guidelines when assessing students in the future, tailored to the circumstances of the class. So again, this is how you score your student pertaining to harmony. So you give score 0 if the student cannot identify difference between consonant and dissonant harmonic intervals both orally and visually. She cannot sing in harmony. So, amo dyan yung score 0. Then you score 1 if the student can sing in harmony after a lot of repetition and support from another sound source such as an accompanying voice or instrument. 2, if your student can sing in harmony as long as there is support from another sound source. 3, the student can sing in harmony confidently. So next is rubrics pertaining to texture. So 0 ang score ng student if she cannot describe and identify if a piece's texture is monophonic, polyphonic, or homophonic upon listening and looking at the score. So, di ba, ang monophonic means single siya with an accompanied melodic line. So, way ija kauban. Which ang homophonic, melody with accompaniment. Ang polyphonic, more than one melody performed at the same time. Then, that's how you score your student. So, 1. If your student has difficulty in describing and identifying if a piece's texture is monophonic, polyphonic, or homophonic upon listening and looking at the score. So, second, R2, the lesson can sometimes analyze and describe a piece's texture upon listening and looking at the score. Then 3, if a student can confidently analyze and describe the texture of a piece while looking at the score and listening to it simultaneously. So now we proceed to lesson 22, rubrics for assessing form and dynamics. When we say form, it is a structure. When we say dynamics naman, na-consider kung sa ija major, kung asa na fall sa major C ba, major D, or major G, or daghan pa ng mga majors. So, objectives. In this lesson, the student will be able to first learn general rubrics or guidelines in assessing musical topics pertaining to form and dynamics, and use the knowledge learned in these rubrics to formulate his or their own set of specific guidelines when assessing students in the future, tailored to the circumstances of the class. So here, what you see in the screen is the rubrics pertaining to form. So, 0 ang score ng student if she or he cannot identify and analyze the form of piece of music. For 1, the student has limited cognition of the form of piece of music but cannot analyze it or cannot tell the relationship between section, phrases, or pattern. So, 3, he/she can hear the phrases or sections with a piece but cannot point them out while looking at the score of the piece. So, pag makabati siya ng mga phrases or section with a piece, pero dili siya maka-point them out sa paglantaw sa score of piece. So, 2 ang score ng student if the student is able to identify and analyze the form of a given piece of music but cannot transfer this knowledge when given a new, different piece. So, makahimo na siya pag-identify o maka-analyze siya ng form kung tagaan siya ng piece of music. Pero, dili sa niya ini ma-transfer na knowledge kung tagaan na siya ng another different piece. So, 3 ang score ng student if he or she is able to sufficiently analyze, identify, and describe the form of a song or any piece of music while listening and looking at a score simultaneously. So, makahimo na siya pag-analyze o identify and also describe the form of a song kung tagaan siya ng bisan uno na kind ng piece ng music pinaagi sa pagpamatira o paglantaw sa score balik-balik. Then 4, ang score ng student if she or he is able to analyze, identify, and describe the form of a song elaborately and is able to tell the tonal relationships between sections and phrases and some ideas in how to interpret it as a whole work through a performance. On how you score your students pertaining to form. Now, let's proceed to rubrics for pertaining to dynamics. So, 0 ang score ng student if the student does not respond or appreciate the dynamic making written on a score while listening or performing a piece of music. So, dili sa maka-respond or maka-appreciate ng dynamic when making or written a score while mamati siya or ma-perform ng piece of music. So, 1 ang score ng student if he or she is inconsistent in responding to dynamic markings when reading them on a score or piece. So, 2 ang score ng student if he or she sometimes respond to dynamic markings when playing a familiar piece but cannot transfer knowledge when learning a new, completely different piece of music. So, that's how you score your student. 3. The student sufficiently responds to dynamic markings written on a score when reading or performing and does them expressively. 4. The student is able to produce excellent variations in producing dynamic markings when reading or performing a piece of music. The gradations of volume from very soft, medium, loud to very loud are remarkably defined while performing. So, for ang score ng student, no? Kung makahimo na siya mag-produce ng excellent variation and producing dynamic markings when reading or performing a piece of music. Tapos makakuha na siya, makadetermine if kuan ba very soft, medium, loud, or very loud ang music while siya mag-perform. So that's all for my topic. Thank you for listening.